Today on Selflove Ignited, I am connecting with Renata. Renata opens up about her challenges with an eating disorder right from the time she was a little kid, about 10 years old. Renata is a content creator. She loves to make other people laugh and feel less alone in this world. And as someone who struggles with anxiety, depression, and an eating disorder, she hopes that hearing about her experiences can help you with your own. This episode is full of laughter. Let's dive on in. Okay, Renata, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here with me.
Hey, Katie, I'm happy to be here. We talked once before and it was a really fun conversation, so I can't wait.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So why don't we just, before we sort of get into the nitty gritty stuff, why don't you just take a quick moment and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, where you are in the world, all that good stuff.
Sure. So I'm Renata. I usually identify as a blogger. I technically have a 9 to 5 where I do more like analytic logistics stuff, but writing is my real passion. So I run a couple of blogs. I also have my own podcast, but it's comedy. It's so funny. Like a lot of people are like, oh, let's talk like female entrepreneur podcast. And I'm like, I do comedy. Like, let's just make people laugh. But did I say I'm in New Jersey? I'm in New Jersey, in
Cool.
East Coast, USA. Yeah, that's it. If my spare time, I play a lot of Animal Crossing. Paper Mario Origami King just came out over the weekend, so I've been playing that a lot. But yeah, chilling with my fiance, playing those. That's what a lot of my free time consists of. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. And if anybody wants to hear your comedy podcast, which I sure do, we're going to link it below when we're done.
Sounds good. Yeah. It's a fun time.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's in there. So here, this podcast, we're all about like self-love and telling the stories of women like you who have come from a place of, not liking parts of themselves, not liking their bodies, being hypercritical, whatever that may be, to really sort of loving and embracing all of who they are, right? So I would really just love for you to share a little bit of your story. Where did your challenges begin? Bring us back to the beginning.
So what's funny, Katie? I always say that I do everything backwards. Like it just seems like I end up like proving something time and time again, and then I start identifying with it. So my eating disorder is one of those things where I sat down one day, literally like very far into my recovery, and went, I have an eating disorder. Like it just dawned on me.
Yeah.
So I distinctly remember, being very young, like middle school, like that, I guess 10, 11, probably even younger than that, really disliking my body, and really, not wanting to show it and being told I shouldn't show it, right? Like being told that it was gross to show fat and things like that. I remember I used to bring in meal replacement bars. I was 10 years old and I was bringing Atkins meal replacement bars to school. And it was just something you did, right? It was just normal. I mean, my friends did it, right? Like that's how we fed our bodies in order to try to stay in shape or whatever. And things really peaked for me. It was the summer in between my sophomore and junior year of high school. I really, really betrayed my body during that time. I malnourished myself. I was eating, I would wake up and have, I want to say, a few glasses of milk, and then literally I would eat like one piece of fruit for the rest of the day and be like, this is it. This is all I can eat. And then I would exercise for like probably 6 or 7 hours. It was summer vacation. I had the time, so I would just really beat the crap out of myself. And then, so I come to the end of it, and it's interesting because what dawned on me, Katie, is that the body that I created then is still sort of the one I have now. Like I haven't gained a lot of it back. And also, I probably lost a lot of baby fat. So it's weird because I'm still existing in almost that neglected body, even though I'm not neglecting it anymore, which is really interesting to me. But I got to the end of the summer and I had knocked off like 20, 25 pounds in like 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Like a crazy amount. Yeah, my metabolism is very fast. Sometimes for the worse.
Yeah.
But I got to the end of that and I realized that I still didn't like my body. It wasn't like, oh wow, now I'm quote unquote thin. Now I love myself. No, I looked back and I said, all that I did to get here was awful. I shouldn't have done that. But then what I did then was I did a whole 180, where I literally was like, okay, thinking about food is a problem for me. And instead of saying at that point, I have an eating disorder, I said, I just won't think anymore. I'll just eat. So whether that meant pastries 3 meals a day, ice cream for dinner, it didn't matter. Like I just wasn't giving my body the fuel that it needed and what it could use to actually like, help me live my life.
Yeah.
So then eventually I hit the point where I said, I focus so much on my mental health. I need to start focusing on my physical health. But of course, when I focus on it, that means that those obsessive thoughts, like those really bad thoughts around food, thoughts around my body, all come flooding back. And it hit me that I'm like, I can't keep avoiding this. I can't just say the answer is to eat ice cream for dinner. Sometimes the answer is to eat ice cream for dinner, but
Yeah.
if you're doing it 4 times a week, might not be the answer anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of realized that I was putting a band-aid over the problem. I wasn't actually fixing the problem. I was fixing a symptom. So I mean, it hasn't been easy. I know I told you a couple weeks ago I was having another rough week. It's definitely still a process, but I know what I'm capable of. One of my friends said that. She said, maybe you should go to therapy for it, like in the space I'm in now. And I said, no, because I know what I'm capable of. I know that, once I get past a certain point, it's, I really need help. And I'm not close to that point yet. I know myself well enough. I think the self-awareness is the important part to say, to be able to look at myself and recognize what's important and recognize what I need at the time. But yeah, so definitely still a process, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I can't believe, I mean, I can believe it, unfortunately, how young that started for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like meal replacement bars, and that wasn't a red flag to an adult in your life or an adult at school or a teacher, like that nobody kind of went, oh, maybe we should check on her. You
The
know?
I feel like I remember the principal kind of saying something to me and my friends, like, guys, this is no good for you. But I mean, I think we all shrugged her off, right? We were like, oh, some people are gonna say that, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I don't remember my parents actually saying anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which that kind of hit me at one point, because I mean, my mom was a teacher. So that one summer that I really abused my body, I keep looking back on that, like, she didn't say any, like, I'm so surprised she didn't say, I see you exercising 3 million hours a day. I see you eating, negative 200 calories. Like,
Yeah.
maybe a wake up call should be happening here.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any idea, and I know you were young, so it might be hard to remember, but like, do you have any idea where this idea came from, that you needed to be, really skinny and restrict? Like, did this come from home? Did it come from kids at school?
So I do remember, like, my mom, it's so interesting generationally, because my mom, she looks at the way her mother raised her and she goes, wow, that was harsh, so I'm not going to be as harsh. But she still was harsh. Like, it,
Yeah.
she realizes it's on a gradient scale, but she's like, but it wasn't that bad, so you're fine. And I'm like, I'm kind of fine. But like, I would talk to my friends and be like, oh, I'm not allowed to wear things that tight. Like, they're like, why not? And I'm like, oh, my mom says I can't show my stomach like that. Like, it took years of like badgering her to let me wear a tankini, like, instead of a one piece, because
Mm-hmm.
she was insistent that I wear a one piece, and not, if I understand correctly, not for the risque factor, but because legitimately she was like, you need to hide. Like, your body is too big. You
Right.
need to hide.
Right.
Um, my dad was usually a little bit better, and my dad's the one in the family that likes shopping, so he always took me shopping for clothes. And he was a little less pushy on it, but he's also like a health nut. So if anything, he was like, well, maybe we need more veggies and maybe we need to do this.
Right.
Um, but we ate out a lot. And I know that I also just kind of ate whatever. I didn't necessarily go for options that were giving my body what it needed.
Yeah.
So the answer was the other meals, eat diet replacement bars, which is
Right.
not ideal either.
Right. So instead of having that sort of healthy balance, you ended up sort of on one end of the spectrum and then way on the other and way on the other. And I mean, if anything, like, that's like the epitome of an eating disorder, right? That's like, you learn from a young age to like do the binging
Well,
and restricting.
it's so interesting, because when I started eating the right amount, at a meal, like sit down and feel comfortable and not feel overly stuffed and not still feel hungry, it
Mm-hmm.
was super uncomfortable. I was like, oh, that's weird. That's how I'm supposed to feel. Like, I always overate. I always overate that.
Yeah.
And now, it is such a familiar space that when I do overeat, I don't like it anymore. I'm like, oh, I feel sick. That's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, wow, this is something I experienced for 20 years, every meal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and either that or I was starving myself. It was, like you said, one end of the spectrum or the other. It was never that healthy middle.
Yeah. 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 So now that you're in this place, and I love that you recognize that you're still sort of working on it, right? And like this is just sort of part of you. It's an ongoing process. But like, how did you get from that teenager who sort of had that sudden realization, like, oh crap, I can lose 20 pounds and I still hate my body, and like maybe I need to do something about this that I haven't tried. How did you get from that to where you are today? What sort of brought you down that path?
I think it was just really, really deciding to work on myself as a human, like not work on myself, my body, not work on myself, tone up, lose weight, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so focused for a long time on my mental health. I was going to therapy for several years for depression and anxiety. I was really making sure I was doing right by myself in any way that I could. Um, and I think it just hit me one day that wellness can't just be contained into that. You can't, for me, I couldn't say I was well and I was healthy unless I was also thinking about doing right by my body.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, it had to be holistic. It couldn't just be that one piece. So, I just kind of looked at myself and I went, you keep being like, oh, I'm good now. Well, no, you're not. You still have all of these unhealthy thoughts about food that you need to start working through.
Yeah. 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 Health is not just one-sided, and it's not, I think unfortunately our society really likes to have this, paint this picture, like the diet industry. It's like, just eat this food and you'll be healthy, or, see a therapist, work on your mental health, you'll be healthy, or, whatever it is. And like we really like to pigeonhole things, do this one thing. And it's like, no, because it's not how we work as human beings.
Well, I think we're all in it for the instant gratification, right? Yes, please give me an easy fix that I can do it real fast, then get on with my life.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? It just dawned on me. So I think another thing that dredged up these things for me was when I was going to therapy. My therapist was she did a lot, like she worked with young people, she worked with depression, blah blah blah. When I talked to her about my eating disorder, she actually made some of my triggers worse. She
Oh.
really didn't know how to handle that. So I think that like having, you know how it is when you have this person in your life that you feel you're supposed to look up to, you feel you've been listening to their advice and it's been helping you so far, and then they give you bad advice.
Yeah.
And it takes you a while to realize like that worked for them, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it can take some time to weed that out and take them off of that pedestal. And so that was really a challenge for me. In fact, I didn't have any, I I wouldn't call them panic attacks, but like food related, I guess I would call them episodes,
Mm-hmm.
until I started seeing her and we started talking about food. I had
Mm.
never had one before. And then we started talking about food, and her not necessarily unhealthy, but her thoughts of like restricting and things like that got into my head.
Yeah.
And they were really not great for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I love what you said there, right? Like what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. So if somebody is, out there struggling with an eating disorder, maybe working with a therapist or a counselor, and you're not feeling it from them, that's okay. Right?
Yes.
Like don't just sort of be like, oh, well, they're a professional, so they have to know what they're doing. Like, trust your gut, trust your instincts.
It's so important. And when you're in that really vulnerable space, you don't feel like you can. You
Yeah.
feel like your instincts must be wrong. You're here. You're in therapy. My instincts must have been wrong about this one. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's hard to get yourself back in the place where you're in the power, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So this sort of journey that you've been on, really struggling with your eating disorder and with your body, and sort of, I don't know if coming to terms is the right thing, but sort of like developing that
Yeah.
like a more positive relationship. Would you say that this is like a self-love journey for you? Is it self-acceptance? Is it more about your body? Like, how would you sort of label it or qualify it?
That's a really good question. And acceptance is probably closest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you talk to me about anything, part of me wants to say cosmic, right? Ephemeral for any amount of time, you
Yeah.
will hear me talk about the self. Like if I had to if someone said you have to have a religion, what is it? My religion would be the self. Like that is how I feel like, you know, when people try to like remove their like, oh, your body is one thing, like don't think of it as part of yourself. My brain is like, no, it's part of yourself. Like you learn to, you know, you figure out the best way to do it. Like, but yeah, so acceptance probably, or just I'm also all about self-awareness. So maybe it's more or less understanding, like self-understanding, getting to the root of it, looking at it realistically and being like, this is an okay thing, but I want to work on it. Yeah. And then actively trying to get to the point where you are, where you're at that self-acceptance and where you're at that, and you know, self-love too. I would agree with that too.
Yeah. Self-love is definitely, I know it's something not everybody identifies with. That's why I like to ask the question. Because for some people, that term in itself is quite triggering. And it's so good to note that, you know, we are all on different places in this journey, and self-love is kind of like far down the track, and it's okay if you don't feel it. Like you don't have to. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. It's not wrong to sort of be in that sort of self-acceptance or self-awareness, or like, I know I've heard other people say, like, it's just about me being my own friend. And like, I'm just not being a jerk to myself anymore. Right. You know?
Well, I think, so here's something radical, and it's actually something that just came to my mind. So have you heard, you know, if someone say, oh, I'm a bad person, but I want to get better. Have you heard, you know, someone will respond to that like, well, you're not a bad person because bad people don't want to get better.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Have you, right? Yeah. So like, you know, when people talk about, you know, how, you know, oh, well, I have narcissistic tendencies, I have this, I hurt people like this. And the answer to that is a lot of times is bad people don't care about getting better. They don't care about hurting others. Yeah. So if you're worried about hurting others and you're worried about getting better, then you automatically care. I would say the same kind of goes for self-love, right? If you're already thinking about it and you're already like, I want to make myself better, or I want to like myself better, or I want to accept myself, yeah, I would say you already love yourself. Yeah. And I totally understand not identifying with that. And it's a very personal thing, 100%. Yeah. But that, I mean, I would kind of apply that logic there and be like, you're already technically practicing radical self-love by caring a minuscule amount about yourself.
Mm. Ooh, I love that. You totally just gave me like goosebumps.
Oh, love it.
But I love that. Like that, I've never actually thought about it in that way, but it's so true. Like if you just have like a 1%, like literally if you're listening to this podcast, if you just have like a little sliver of you that's going, maybe this is for me. Maybe I can start. Maybe you're already doing it.
Right? Yeah. That's totally how I feel. Yeah. And that's awesome. I mean, I'm all about celebrating small steps. It's something that I've like never done in my life, but I'm trying to work on. I'm all about celebrating small steps.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So on this stage of your journey, you know, what sort of self-care or like daily practices do you have in place to really keep yourself or check in with yourself and make sure that you are being a friend and staying aware on that path?
So as far as just general self-care, I haven't talked to her in a minute, but I have a dietitian that I've been working with who's all about intuitive eating. So literally it's like, if your body feels like it wants to eat this, then that's what it needs. Give it that. And, you know, and it'll, number one, it'll give your body what it's craving. And number two, you won't binge it later because it's forbidden or whatever, which I think is super excellent. Yep. I think that's a lot of self-love right there. Just being like, hey, body, tell me, do you want chips? Cookie dough? It's fine. You can have cookie dough. And actually one thing that she had me do, which I haven't had to do in a while, but it really helped. So I repressed my hunger cues for so long, right? Just telling myself, you're not hungry, like, you know. But she was like, you know, set an alarm on your phone for every 3 hours or whatever during your waking period. Every 3 hours, set an alarm. And when it goes off, think, am I hungry? And she's like, in all honesty, you should be eating every 3 hours. Even if you sit back and think I'm not hungry, eat something, a handful of something, whatever. But for me, what I do on the reg is, in order to keep that up, keep up a variety of different things around me. Cover everything. Cover crunchy, cover chewy, cover sweet, cover salty. Make sure that you have everything at your disposal, because then no matter what your body wants, you just go at it.
Nice.
Yeah. Just keep the house stocked with Parmesan goldfish is my number one thing. Well, that's what I bought 1 or 2 bags of Parmesan goldfish, and I'm emailing my dietitian. I'm like, oh yeah, I literally went through the bag in a day, and she's like, so maybe what we do is we buy 4 bags of Parmesan goldfish, so then our brains know that it's there for us when we want it. And I'm like, I love someone whose solution is more Parmesan goldfish, because that's the perfect solution to any problem in my book.
That's great. But it makes so much sense though, right? Because then there's not this lack mentality. There's not like I have to have it or it's going to go away. It's like you literally have as much as you want. And as soon as you realize that, like I remember as well, like I grew up on Weight Watchers and dieting and that sort of thing. And there was very much that like restriction mentality. I've never had an eating disorder, but I would definitely say I had disordered eating.
Right.
And I remember sort of in my 20s when I started just being like, you know what, I'm just going to not worry. And if I want chocolate, I'm going to eat chocolate. And now I can have chocolate in the house all the time and I won't eat it for days at a time because that is gone.
Right.
That like, I must have it. But that sort of where you're at with like, literally just buy a whole crap ton of it and chuck it in your kitchen. Like that's a really important step. Yeah.
Well, and that's what my fiance keeps. So Parmesan goldfish. The other thing that I will bring up is peanut butter M&Ms because they are magic. But like my fiance literally buys it by the tub. And, you know, if I literally just grab a handful when I want a handful, then I'm not holding the tub in between my legs, you know, because I've been starving myself for it for 3 weeks and just shoveling them.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, yeah. And also I think the other thing is have options that taste good to you no matter what, right? Like I know what option, like what veggie options I have that I really, really like. So keeping them available is always awesome too. And just making food enjoyable. I think that's a big key is making food enjoyable. Even if you're, you know, eating clean, you don't have to eat garbage.
Totally. Yeah. Healthy doesn't have to be like cardboard and plain rice cakes. Like
yes.
That's gross.
Although I really like plain rice cakes. I'm kind of a fan. Yeah. Just put that out there.
I love that. You know, well, actually, they're actually really good with peanut butter on them. I just have to tell you.
Also true. Yeah. Peanut butter on anything. I'm pretty about.
Yeah. 100%. Totally agree. So this place of, you know, where you're at on your journey right now, how would you say developing this sort of healthier relationship with your food and with food and with your body, how has that influenced your mental health and well-being, like from day to day? Like what's the difference between eating disorder in the middle of it versus now?
So it's really tough because you know what I guess the answer to that is that I'm not listening to it as closely. Like there are intrusive thoughts. I legitimately at this point I don't know if I'm ever going to get rid of those. Like I am in a constant cycle. I wrote a piece for a magazine once where I explained it's more or less where I'm sitting at my desk and I'll think, am I hungry yet? I had better not be hungry. If I am hungry, I need to eat something healthy. I'm not going to eat something healthy. Oh no, am I hungry yet? Am I hungry yet? And I just literally like that loop just goes, you know, if I let it, that loop will just continue. And I think what it comes down to is not listening to it anymore is, you know, just being like, okay, yeah, brain, I get it. Like you're worried about stuff, like calm down. We're going to live through this. That is definitely like a huge thing where before I would listen to it and be like, okay, I just can't be hungry. I just can't. I need to just like not eat for however many hours. Whereas now I kind of like push it to the back a little bit. Also one thing that I'm working on is being understanding with myself when I overeat, because overeating is a challenge for me because I have acid reflux. So it not only is something that's like, oh, that's inconvenient, I overate and I don't love that about myself. It's, oh no, I'm in pain and very nauseous, I overate again, darn.
Right.
So it's what I'm really working on now. And once again, being in a place where I even can work on it instead of just being like, no, I can never overeat again. You know, I will burn on a cross, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it's, you know, saying to myself, dude, you overate once. It's not the end of the world. There are going to be other meals in your life and you're going to be okay. This pain is going to stop.
Yeah.
And you just need to listen. That's what it comes down to, is listening. And that is something that I hope I get right at some point. But as of right now, I don't listen perfectly to my body.
Yeah.
And I really want to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's a journey. It's a journey. The amount of awareness you have is incredible. And
Oh,
without,
thanks, man.
and yeah, and but like without that, without two things, your awareness, but also your willingness to just be really honest about it and actually have this conversation with me here today. Like it's a big deal that you can just be like, listen, this is me, this is my struggles, this is my challenges. I'm like, I'm not loving that I'm still having these challenges, but like, it's okay. Like, that's
For
pretty awesome.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their stuff, and maybe listening to this will help someone or make them want to reach out to me about stuff. Like, maybe not, but it's it's good. I think it's good to get it out there. And plus then I can get your opinion on it. I can get someone else's opinion on it. Like with disorders like this, it's all in here.
Yeah.
Wow, no one can see me except you. It's all in my head. the intrusive thoughts are all in my head.
Yeah.
So talking to someone, verbalizing it, getting someone else to say something to me, like it really helps immensely.
Yeah. 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 And that's so important too, because I know a lot of people, when you're in the middle, like when you're in sort of like that deep dark place, talking to somebody, reaching out can be like the last thing in the world you want to do, right? That's like, oh
Yeah.
my, why would I ever share this with somebody? Why would I ever talk to them? Why would I ever do that? But there's a lot of power in that. And if you can sort of be courageous enough to reach out, even if it's just a friend, right? Like it doesn't always have to be somebody that you don't know. It can just be like a friend or a sibling, and just be like, hey, I'm really struggling. Can I just share? Like,
And
that's powerful.
and sort of on that, I would say this is close to the self-love, self-acceptance scale, and not only being like sharing with a friend, like, I need you to help me with this, I need you to drag me to rehab or something like that, just being like, I'm not ready for X type of help yet, but
Yeah.
I'm ready for Y type of help. Can I get that from you?
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, that's that knowledge, that self-awareness of knowing exactly what you need at the moment and being able to verbalize it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. Oh, so
Yeah, deep stuff, man.
I know, right? I know. No, but it's good. Like I really hope that I really hope that listeners can hear this and sort of hear your story. And if they're struggling with an eating disorder, or really struggling with their body, or just with binging with food, or whatever it happens to be, or even if it's not a food thing, but if it's something else and they're not sure if they can reach out or talk to somebody about it, like, you can. And it might be scary, and it does take courage, and you have to sort of be brave, I think, the first couple of times, but that's how you change your life, and you will help others. And people inherently want to help you. Like it's a human
Yeah.
thing. We want to help each other. And I think the more we open up to each other and share our struggles, the more our relationships really flourish and deepen. And I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway.
No, you're good. No, it was good stuff, man. It was good stuff.
Cool. So on that note, how has this affected your like your relationships? Whether it's with, I know you said you're engaged, like you have a fiance, whether it's with your fiance, or your parents, your family, your friends, like as your relationship with your body and with food has changed, has that affected your other relationships?
That is an interesting question, and feel free to like flag me down if you're like, Renata, you've spoken for 23,000 minutes, like stop now. So it was so interesting. I had a conversation literally like actually not even a week and a half ago with a friend of my parents. So he's in his 50s, like my parents are, and he's really into intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And so, so I was able to talk to him because I'm doing intermittent fasting. And I really was hoping for like an educating moment, just of that awareness, like, oh, not everyone has the same desires I have around bodies and eating. And it's a struggle sometimes, especially with older people, where the older generations are very like kind of one track minded. He's the sweetest person. I am not dissing him at all, but like so first of all, he could talk about intermittent fasting for like a long time. He was very, very into it.
Okay.
But literally, like, I just kept trying to be like, yes, I'm doing this for my acid reflux. I don't want to lose weight. That is not my goal. If I make that my goal, I will suffer. Like, I use the word eating disorder over and over and be like, yes, you can think about it that way, but I can't. Like,
Right.
that will not help me. That will harm me. and just trying to get through. It was like bashing my head against a wall. He texted me when he got home and he goes, "Here are the protein shakes I've been having for one meal a day." And I'm like, thank you. Like, I can't do that to myself.
Yeah.
Like, and the other thing, actually, the other thing I wanted to say to him that didn't dawn on me until the week after was, dude, you don't get a period, man. Like, when my period comes, I need to shovel stuff down. Like, your metabolism just speeds up. And I'm like, you don't get it. You just don't get it.
Yeah.
So it can be hard, but at the same time, I use those words. I want to use the words eating disorder. Like, I'm not hiding it. And I want people to understand, like, especially non-empathetic people, like, I want to just try to, like, crack that shell a little bit, like, break in there and be like, there are people outside your sphere that don't think like you.
Yeah.
There are people that you're harming. I wrote a post with my dietitian on eating disorders, and since then my mother will not, like, tell someone, "Oh, you look good, you lost weight." She's like, "No, I don't do that anymore."
You
She's
got
like,
to her. You got to her. Yay.
she's like, because then it implies they didn't look good before, so I just don't say anything. I just, say hi and talk to them about their life, and I'm like, amazing. But yeah, sometimes with my fiance it can get a little weird because I was just taught to be ashamed of, like, food on so many different levels. And sometimes I do something, I look at him like, dude, I'm like, I wish you know what it is? Deep down, I wish I didn't feel the shame. Like, he doesn't feel any shame. And I'm like, I wish I didn't feel any shame. That would be so nice. And sometimes that jealousy gets the better of me a little bit. I'm working on it. But yeah, so definitely I wouldn't say, sometimes it can get a little hairy, but overall I just try to use it to educate a little bit, like,
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So how is this journey, like, I know you said that you've, like, written a post about this, which is awesome. So how has this journey affected your path to, like, being a blogger and being a podcaster? Like, how has it influenced that?
So I'm not sure that that's hard to say, because, like I said, my belief is the self. This is just like a minuscule part of me, right? So I'm like, my entirety went to be a blogger. So I'm like, part of me was like, it didn't influence me, but everything that is the core of my being, that everything I've experienced for 27 years has led me here. That is just the truth.
Yeah.
It is something that I talk about, I wouldn't say frequently, but more frequent than other things. Blogging was a whole nother type of autonomy, a whole nother type of creative autonomy, mental autonomy, spiritual autonomy, that didn't have too much to do with this journey. In general, I do want to make people feel less alone and help people to feel heard. That is definitely one of the goals of my blog. But I would not say in particular for this. I've done some really awesome collaborations with some really awesome people who have read my blog and been like, I experienced this. Can we talk about it together? Which is really a really spectacular consequence. But going into the blog, it was never this is what it's going to be about.
Okay. Yeah. But what a beautiful platform for you to, when you do feel called.
Of course. Yeah. My most interesting one was, or my most recent one was pretty interesting. It was about non-food related ways that my eating disorder affects me. And one of them being when I sit at yoga and they say, take it, we're meditating, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I don't take a deep breath during the day because I don't like the feeling of my stomach against my pants. I hate it. So I don't breathe totally during the day unless I am forced to do it, and then I hate it.
Yeah. That is interesting. And I think can you please make sure you send me that? Because I want to link to that article.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's another thing that's, like, just important to note, right? Is that eating disorders are not only about food.
Right.
Food is, like, sort of the big thing that you can see. It's maybe the most obvious, but, like, I love that you sort of have that level of awareness where you're like, I don't freaking breathe properly.
Right.
And that's, like, a symptom of having this disordered relationship with food and with your body. But again, if you start with the awareness piece, if you start with being like, oh, I don't breathe properly, and you decide that you want to do something about it, then you can take those little steps, and it's not just the food piece, right? It's like all the extra little bits and pieces.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I actually, so as I'm sitting here with my pants now I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like real focused on it.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing is we get so in our heads about there only being one solution when there are so many. So I'm thinking as you're saying this, working, like how would I work on it? And one simple way that I think people wouldn't think of, people would be like, oh, I just need to learn how to get over it. Buy pants that are literally bigger, like literally buy pants that sit an extra centimeter away from your stomach. You don't feel it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like definitely my looser pants are more comfortable and I can breathe in them, and I'm just, my brain goes, that's a crappy solution. It's not actually fixing anything, but it could be that one step, that acceptance step to the love, right? That could be just one movement forward.
Yeah. Not every single thing has to be the grand fix. It's not the grand solution. Every single thing is a step. That's it.
Celebrating small steps.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. So if there was, like, as we're sort of getting ready to wrap up here, there's been so much really great stuff that we've talked about. But if there was like one exercise or practice or like one thing that you would recommend listeners to implement if they're sort of struggling with the same things that you have, what would that one thing be, do you think?
So the biggest thing that I learned when I got to the end of that really, really dark place, when I got to that, that spot, and I said, wow, I don't like my body anymore. The lesson that really hit me was I have been putting off my happiness. I have been putting off living my truth until I get thinner. And I didn't want to live my truth then either. So I have stopped caring about the weight part of like wearing crop top. I wanted to start wearing crop tops. I started wearing crop tops. I wanted to start wearing bikinis. I started wearing bikinis. Like, people may roll their eyes at the cliche, like, oh, to have a bikini body, just wear a bikini. But that's literally what it is. When you look at something and go, wow, I wish I could do that. The answer is to do it. That's really the answer. So stop postponing your happiness. Please stop postponing your happiness. Like, it's not worth it. And at the end of the road, in all honesty, usually you're still unhappy anyway, or you're unsatisfied because you need a new goal to reach a different kind of happiness. Yeah. So stop postponing it. If you look at your list and you're like, well, I want to do this thing, do it. Is how I feel.
Mic drop.
Did it.
Done. Bam. Peace out. That's all I got. Oh, I love it. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. So if listeners want to chat with you, if they want to connect, or if they are wanting to, hear more about your story, where is the best place for them to get in touch with you directly?
So the best place to get in touch with me would probably be Twitter or Insta, where my handle is @RenataOLeo. My email is also listed, on the contact page of my blog, if you want to find it there, and if you want to do some reading. Some of it is light reading. Don't worry, it's not all eating disorders and depression. Right now we're in COVID, so it kind of is a lot of eating disorders and depression. If you go back a little ways, you'll find fun stuff.
Cool. Love it. Yeah. And I'll make sure to put all the links to that in the show notes so that it's really easy to click on through. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't say them. Yeah, I didn't do the thing. So thank you.
You're good. Don't worry. I got you. Okay, Renata, thank you so much for being here. This has been super, super fun. And I feel like I have actually learned a lot through this. And I'm just really grateful for you to come on today.
Yeah, no, dude, it was a lot of fun. I think you and I also have a great chemistry. Like, I think we just had a really great conversation, and I'm super happy to have done this with you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you so much for listening. This episode with Renata was such a good one and was so much fun to record for you. If you want to get in touch with her, find out more about her story, about what she does, or read her blog or listen to her podcast, all of the links to those are down in the show notes. Renata is a beautiful soul and really an open book, and I know that if you feel called to connect with her, if you want to ask her more questions, she would absolutely love to talk with you. Thank you so much for being here. Here is to you loving all parts of yourself.